was informed by the Japanese authorities that the explosion occurred outside the primary containment vessel at Unit 1, and the integrity of that vessel is confirmed.
TEPCO also notified the government this morning that reactor number 3 had lost its ability to cool its core and that radioactive steam was being released. The plant's operators also warned that levels of radioactivity around the facility had exceeded the legal limit this morning. Hourly radiation at the plant was 882 microsieverts, in excess of the allowable 500 microsieverts, but at one point the level had risen to more than 1,200. But government spokesman Edano insisted that those negligible radioactivity levels pose no immediate threat to human health. Authorities have been struggling to contain the radiation at the facility since the massive quake knocked out power for the cooling system and emergency generators were flooded by water from the tsunami that followed.
The IAEA has remained in close touch with the Japanese authorities throughout the emergency and continues to do so. I know the Japanese authorities are working their hardest to gather the necessary details and ensure safety under difficult and constantly evolving circumstances.
The battle at the Fukushima reactor is just one of several being waged in the worst nuclear power crisis in a quarter of a century. The cooling water levels in reactor number 3 have dropped so much that up to 3 meters of fuel rods are exposed, making overheating and another explosion a real threat. So to prevent a nuclear meltdown, workers have been pumping seawater into the reactor. But seawater can damage it. Hours before Edano confirmed the new nuclear threat, authorities had begun evacuating more than 200,000 people living within 20 kilometers of reactor number 1 and 10 kilometers of reactor number 2, which is being closely monitored. People living within the evacuation radius, or those who were scanned and found to have been exposed to radiation, were confined to a specific evacuation centre. Preparations were also made to hand out potassium iodide pills to protect people from radiation exposure, and residents were warned to stay inside and cover their mouths if they ventured outside. And Japanese media say the massive earthquake could have killed 10,000 people.
Some new amateur video has emerged of the moment the tsunami hit Japan's northeast coastline just after the tremor. ATV's Hailing Chan takes a look.
This is the exact moment Japan experienced its worst natural disaster in 140 years. This amateur footage from Miyako City in Iwate Prefecture captures every second of the horror. There were similar scenes in Kamaishi City, with a tsunami carrying entire buildings and boats across the port. As the water receded in the battered city of Sendai, the capital of Miyagi Prefecture, it took with it the debris of collapsed buildings. In Minami Sanriku, about 10,000 people are unaccounted for. That's about half of the town's population. People on this bus had a lucky escape.